So I'm beginning to notice a bit of a trend here when it comes to looking at fan games and ROM hacks and whatnot, taking a look at the creators and what they're working on, and seeing that there's starting to become a wave of people moving on from these really cool projects into something that's more original, you know, something that they can be paid for, which is always a good thing. On the main channel in my big Mario fan game video, I shouted out Horoscope, which is a really cool looking indie game that does have a root in Mario fan game history. That's super cool, and today we're going to talk about another one of those with Kero Quest 64. We got a pretty star-studded roster here. We got Melon Speedruns, who is one of the primary guys behind Ship of Harkinian, the Ocarina of Time PC port, as well as Super Mario 64 Online. Very cool things going on there. We got AntDude, who made this really cool Mario 64 hack called Decades Later, which was like reimagining the entirety of that game, taking place decades after the events of that original game. So like expanding the original levels and whatnot, and it was just a super cool idea, expanded in a really cool playable fashion. So really cool gameplay stuff right there. You know that gameplay wise this game is gonna nail the Mario 64 feel perfectly. And last but not least, we have the Ridiculous R, and admittedly I don't really know much about their previous work, but for this game they were working on 3D models and animations and character designs and also doing the music, and so that's a lot of talent. There's a lot of talent on this team, so that's pretty exciting stuff. So when there's a backstory like that, I am automatically inclined to be interested in the game. Like, yes, you can tell right now, this is a low poly 3D platformer. Of course, I was gonna want to play it and enjoy it and whatnot, but having the roots in Mario fan game and ROM hack history, I think that puts this a step above, because you can already play some really awesome projects that prove that these guys know what they're doing. So I'm sure that there are some of you out there who are automatically going to be interested in this game right from the jump because of that fact, but let's say you don't really care, and that's fine. You just want a cool, fun little game to play. I have to say that I did get in contact with the creator, thanks to one John Cartwright of Good Vibes Gaming fame. Go and love them if you haven't yet. And they hooked me up with the demo, and yes, that demo is readily available on Kickstarter, so you can go ahead and download it anyway, but it feels cool to say that I got in contact with them beforehand. There's probably I feel like I legally have to say that because I am a little bit biased now, but I got to play Kero Quest 64, I completed the entire demo, and yeah. This is going to be a pretty damn good game. Now, when this video is going live, the Kickstarter is nearly done. They have succeeded in their goal, but they can always use a little bit of extra funding to push forward to newer goals. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go ahead and do so. We're on the final stretch here. This game is going to be a success, but let's make it more of a success, you know? So obviously I'm no stranger to 3D platformers, especially of the low poly variety. I am loving the fact that there are more and more popping up on a regular basis in the indie game space. Like, I love that so much, but it does sort of make it hard to discern what's happening in each one because there are just so many happening. Here's the core basis that I can lay out for why Kero Quest 64 is going to be a pretty fun time, because there's no real frills about it. This is just a super cozy and relaxing kinda with basic platforming challenge. Just platformer. You just run around this area. You got a couple abilities, like you have the Mario Galaxy spin, like that's cool, always like that. Of course you're a frog, so you have an expandable tongue. You can use that for some platforming, cool. But otherwise this is a pretty basic little platformer here, but having the roots in Mario 64 history, you know, it does feel like a more smoothed out version of that. Like, there's just this character here. Not only is he just adorable, like I'm always going to be a big fan of little guys going on little adventures, but he does feel really good to play, and it's one of those play styles where you can tell, like, it's very simple and you can do all the basic moves that you need to, but if the full game were to have some like extra challenging things in the very late game, I can see them getting away with that just fine, because there's already a few jumps in this game where you got to angle your tongue just right as you're jumping to nail some jumps. I can see that there's potential here for sure, but as far as this demo is concerned, you just got one kind of area with multiple different rooms, and each room does kind of act like its own mini level. If you go on the pause screen, it shows you its own, you know, layout of, okay, you got to collect this many shards in this area. It's pretty standard, but it is pretty cool that instead of there being a Mario 64 style like hub world and you're jumping into portraits and whatnot, here it's like everything is kind of interconnected, and I like that. You pass by these signs and that's sort of the cutoff point into the different levels. Cool. So everything kind of feels connected and disjointed at the same time in a way that I think goes pretty far in the little bit of world building that's happening here, because you got a few frog NPCs. There's this like calming little central area where you got to talk with some characters more, and you can see there's already going to be some secrets that I know they're going to be cooking up for the final product. So ultimately, if this is not like a character-based adventure, this is just a mechanic-based adventure, the primary thing that needs to be the most important is the level design. And so far, these guys know what they're doing. This level, these few levels that are in this demo are really well designed, because there are landmarks around every corner, and by there being landmarks around every corner, you can tell the main collectibles, those little shards, are going to be very close behind. I'm noticing a pretty cool progression system that's going to be played into here too. As you can tell, there are some transparent platforms that have a card suit on them, and you're like, oh, okay, this is like kind of Mario World style. You got to find the right switch first before those platforms become tangible and you can jump on them. Okay, I see where they're going with this. And I really liked how this worked out. So you play the game for a decent bit, you're collecting some stuff, you're getting some coins and some shards, talking to a couple characters, all fine and dandy, and then you find yourself in this big ominous tower where you do some vertical platforming. And this is something that I love, because I still feel like not a ton of platformers really strive to do some good vertical platforming. It's just tougher to make that interesting. But this, I like this. You're just scaling this tower. There's a bunch of different micro puzzles going on inside and outside, and you're flipping some switches all until you get to the very top, and then boom, you hit the switch. You can go back to previous levels and now get the couple last shards you're missing. Cool. Something about like the kind of ominous vibes of this tower really was reminiscent to some of these classic N64 games, or there would just be these structures that seemed like they were meant to be climbed, but you could never do something with. It was just there for the vibes, and this is kind of nailing that to me. Like, this feels proper N64 in terms of the aesthetic. Now, visually, you can tell it's a little bit more smooth than an N64 game, kind of like this middle point between N64 and GameCube era. There is a low, not a low polygon filter, but it just lowers the resolution, adds some more jaggies to the game, like in general, and it does look pretty good. You know, of all the filters that I ever see, this one is inoffensive. If you want to play that way, cool. I do like the smoothed out graphics, but ultimately this is really one of those instances where I came out of a demo and I don't really have any complaint. Okay, that's not true. The enemies are kind of annoying. And when I say enemies, there's one. If you play the game, there are these like bomber jet birds that ruined my life, because God bless it, man. I love the fact that there's vertical platforming, but these pricks just kept knocking me down, and I kept having to jump into the stupid pipe and start from the bottom so many times. I want them dead. And don't worry, I've already told Melon Speedruns, one of the main guys here, that I want these guys dead and buried, and I think they're working on it. So thank God, because I was starting to get frustrated. And if there were going to be more of these games, I don't know. I'm thinking 0 out of 10. Dude, look at the coins, how they're like these like spinning PNG images. Like, that's such a lost art. I love that for low poly games, to have collectibles that are just 2D images that look like they're rotating. I love that. Like, that's a commitment to the bit that this game needs, and I love it. And yeah, the music is also really good. It really evokes that sort of more atmospheric vibe with an underlying melody that I felt like was more apparent in this era of games, and I like that. It's not necessarily music that you may be humming every single minute of the day, like it's just going to be an earworm and you can't stop thinking about it, but when you're in these vibes, like it's that combined with the sort of croaky sounds of the main character, it's just a very pleasant and breezy platformer to go through. I think that's just the entire vibe that this team is going for, and I am very much excited for the full product. But if the game maintains this pace, but just consistently like ups the platforming challenge a little bit as you're going from more of the suits, like the card suits, like that, this would be like a perfect like 3D platformer. Maybe not one that may be a 10 out of 10, but one that I don't see there really being much wrong with, and that's a damn good position to be in as far as I'm concerned. Like, this is gonna hit the niche perfectly. Plus, there's already like a speedrun timer option in the main options menu, so you already got your replay value right there, man. Just try and blast through this game as fast as you can. You're set. You're totally set here. It is nice to see that we have a 3D platformer here that's sort of N64, Mario 64 styled, that's not really trying to do anything super grand or ambitious, or hey, we're gonna try to, you know, change things up, or we're gonna try to really make the characters like all this intense and memorable. It's like, no, they're taking a very simple and basic idea and just polishing the hell out of it. The character models are great, simple, but great. Mechanics, super great, but once again, I see the potential for high level stuff in the late game. The few NPCs that are here, I can see them just becoming a little bit likable, because you as a main character, you're just like an empty slate. Outside of the little noises you make, you're bouncing off everyone else, and you got this little nerd friend, and like he climbs the tower before you, and then you go speak to him, and he's like, oh, catching my breath. Like, that's cute. That's a cute little bit of dialogue. This game doesn't need a whole lot of story. It's just a very simple game, but it's polished like hell, and I can tell that this is going to be good because the character, like, I'm just ranting and raving about this game because I can really see a bright future for this. But just remember, I am very biased when it comes to 3D platformers. It really takes a lot for me to not like a 3D platformer, and I can just tell one of the first things I did in 2025 was play this demo, and it filled me with a bunch of joy, and I think it'll fill you with joy too. So go and check out the Kickstarter link down below. Keep this game on your radar if you want more 3D platformers. If you really like the fan game and ROM hack history that leads into a full game that these devs can actually get paid for their work, then check out the game. That's another good reason to do so. If you have played the game, let me know what your thoughts are down below. We'll circle back on this when the full game releases. How's that sound, huh? Look at this little dance once again, man. It's beautiful. I love them.